Hi, everyone. We are here today with licensed therapist Summer Forlenza, and she is going to talk to us about financial wellness. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name's Summer. I'm a licensed therapist. I have been working with Will Rogers for maybe about 2 or 3 years now, on and off, to provide information on mental health and wellness and well being. And it's always such a wonderful experience. So, thank you, Emma, for having me. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the connection between our financial situation, our financial well being, and our overall wellness. Because a lot of times when we talk about finances, we tend to think that we are really just focusing on numbers and like accounts, and that it's just sort of its own world. And really, I want to propose to you today that our financial well-being is directly related to our emotional, our mental, our relational well-being, and that when we take care of our finances, we're also taking care of ourselves and all of those things around us. So let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today. We're going to start with our introductions, which we've just done. I'm going to tell you a little bit, kind of introduce you also to some of the ways that our finances affect us outside of just our financial world. So we'll do that. We'll cover that. Then we're going to go into a Q&A, and this is actually based on questions that we polled the Will Rogers Instagram audience on. So we've been doing a really fun Instagram series over the last few months all about financial wellness, and we've got some Q&A coming directly from the audience that we're going to answer together. And then we'll kind of close up with a little bit of a note on what Will Rogers can offer and some of the services that you guys have access to through Emma. But let's start by just acknowledging and noticing that money is more than a number in your bank account. A lot of times when we talk about money, we talk about finances, we think this is just what's going on with my accounts. This is, how much money I have to spend. Sure, maybe there's a little bit of stress, but we kind of divorce it from our overall well-being. And I want to propose to you this concept of financial wellness, that when our finances, even if they are not perfect, which they're never going to be, but when our finances, we feel like we have a sense of what's going on, a sense of ownership or some sort of control, that it actually benefits us in so many other areas of our life. So let's talk a little bit about what that actually looks like. Let's break that down. So the first thing that our finances can affect outside of just our finances and the money we have access to is our anxiety. So money anxiety is a universal experience. This is something that I've never met someone who hasn't experienced this. It is a part of life that all of us are navigating. So if you feel stressed about your finances from time to time, you're in good company and you're definitely not alone in that. This stress about finances can happen when we feel that we might be overspending, when we're not sure if we'll be able to afford our bills, when we're not sure that we're going to make enough money, maybe we've been sick, we've had to miss work. All of those things can contribute to financial stress. And when we are experiencing financial stress, it'll impact us in lots of different ways. So maybe you'll experience things like sleep issues. I know for many people who I work with, when anxiety gets higher, sleep gets worse. So you have trouble falling asleep, you have trouble staying asleep, you're having difficult dreams, you're not very restful while you're sleeping. All of that can be really directly related to financial anxiety and money anxiety. You might also have symptoms in your physical body. So some people have headaches, stomach aches, muscle pain and tension. This is especially true if your anxiety related to finances has been chronic, has been going on for kind of a long time. Anxiety is a physical experience. It's not something that just happens in our brain. It's our body responding to something that we feel is a threat by preparing you to fight it off or run away. And that means that the way that anxiety shows up is physical symptoms. So if you're experiencing financial anxiety or financial stress in an ongoing way, you can experience those headaches, those muscle pain, stomach aches, things like that. You also might experience financial stress as relationship tension, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. But if you're feeling continuously stressed or anxious about money, that can impact the way that you show up with your partner, with your friends, with your family, with your kids, and there can be a big impact on that area of life as well. Because we know that financial stress and financial concerns are going to be a part of life, right? Almost none of us get to completely divorce ourselves from financial stress. That means that our goal is not to manage our finances perfectly. The goal is not to have a perfect idea of how we manage our money. The goal instead is to come up with ways to cope with the stress that are related to anxiety and to overall reduce it by feeling a strong, like a greater sense of control or influence over what's happening in our life financially. A second area that money anxiety can affect, or that finances can affect us, is our self worth. So maybe anyone who's watching here can think about a time where your finances, what was going on in your budget, what was going on in your bank account, you felt that that really tied to your value as a person. There's actually a lot of messages in our world that send this message directly, that say the more money that you have, the better you are, the more valuable you are, the more interesting you are, the more attractive you are. This is something that's shared in music, in TV, in movies, in pop culture. The sense that your money is tied to your self worth, and if that's a message you've internalized, which would make sense because it's so ubiquitous in our culture, then it can happen that when you are struggling with finances or feeling some anxiety, it can really directly impact your self worth. When we feel that my money and my financial well-being is directly tied to my self-worth, that can lead to this experience of shame when our finances are not doing as well as we would like them to, or when we don't perceive them to be doing as well as we'd like them to. So if we look in our bank account and we realize, hey, I don't have the number there that I would want or need to feel comfortable, or I don't have the number there that I think other people would want to see, if we have to say no to traveling with our friends or our family, or no to going out to dinner, things like that, then we might feel shame. We might feel the sense of, I'm not good enough. I have failed because my money isn't where I would like it to be or where I think that it should be. And when we are in this place of shame, a lot of times that leads us to avoid, right? So shame is an emotion that kind of, I always represent it as like kind of this curling in, this hiding. And when we're curling in and we're hiding with shame, a lot of times we're like, I don't even want to look at my money. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to look at it. And we can find ourselves in these cycles of avoidance, of really not paying attention to the things that might actually improve our financial well being because we're overwhelmed and we're feeling shame because our self worth is tied to that. So it can be really important to separate who you are from your finances, because your value as a person has nothing to do with how much money you have access to, with how much is in your bank account, with how much you earn. While those messages are really, really strong in our world, it's not actually an accurate reflection of who you are. Every single person that I know, almost all of us here who are here on this planet, are going to have periods of time where our finances are doing better and periods of time where they're more stressful or things are tighter. That does not tie directly to your worth as a person. And it's really important as you go on this journey to improve your financial wellness to start to challenge that idea and just start to notice, hey, there's times where I get really down on myself or I'm really hard on myself because of what's going on with my money. And that actually isn't helping me to get to the place with my money that I want to be. So when you separate your identity from your finances, you actually also create space for healthier money decisions overall. All right, let's go to our next one. And this is our relationships. So our finances affect our relationships. Money conversations are often some of the hardest conversations that we have in our relationships. We often talk about politics or religion being these really difficult topics, but money is often way harder than either of those. When we're experiencing financial stress, it can be really hard to communicate that with the people around us, even the people who love us, because we have this connection to self worth, we can feel shame about it. However, when we communicate openly about our financial situation, this doesn't mean you have to be completely transparent, and have no privacy at all. But when you're able to share with people, actually, things are a little bit tighter this month. So if you want to come over for dinner instead of going out, I'm happy to feed you at home or something like that. That actually strengthens your relationships. That's a good thing. Um, you also might notice when it comes to relationships and finances that people have different values when it comes to money. And that means that people like to spend their money differently. You might even notice that there is some judgment about the way that you want to spend your money, or you might experience feeling judgment about the way other people spend their money. All of that is very, very normal, and different values around money is not something that means you can't have a relationship, a good relationship with someone, but it can be something that can be tricky to navigate. So again, we're noticing here that our finances are more than just what's going on in our bank account. They're affecting our levels of anxiety, our self-worth and our shame, and our relationship. And then finally, our finances affect our overall wellness. And I feel that this is really important to acknowledge because when we are in a place where our finances are tighter, where we have less access to money, where our budget is has to be more strict, that can reduce our opportunity to start doing things that help us to feel better, right? It can help like if we can't afford to do things like go get massages, take time off, stay home with our kids, access healthcare, access nutrition, those things can have a really direct impact on us. And I want to acknowledge that as we have this conversation, that money, while money can't buy happiness, it can buy self care a lot of the time, and it can buy access to the things that help us to feel well. So if you are watching this presentation and feeling a sense of frustration at what's going on for you financially, that makes sense. It has an actual real impact on you. And I just want to validate that experience. But wellness, also want to say that wellness isn't just about having more money. When it comes to our financial wellness, a lot of times it's feeling more in control with our money. It's feeling a better sense of I know how much is going out and how much is coming in. I have an ability to control my spending. I'm not spending impulsively. I feel like when I do spend money, it's purposeful and meaningful. And we don't necessarily have to change the numbers as much as we change our relationship to our money and the way that we engage with it. So, as we're going through this presentation, we're going to talk about small steps that you can take to feel more in control, to feel more stable with your finances. And those can immediately improve your mental health, reduce anxiety, improve self worth, improve relationships. And I want to encourage you as we go through this to recognize that while this can feel overwhelming to start to address your money and your finances, our focus here is on progress, not perfection. So it's okay if you have months where you mess up, weeks where you mess up, where you like look back and you think, oh, I didn't need to spend that. Oh, I should have saved that there. That's all a part of this whole process. So be kind to yourself and focus on the long game as we go through this. Okay. Alrighty, so I think Emma's going to come on back, and we're going to talk about some of the questions that you all sent us.
Yes, and I personally love that you just mentioned that because I'm one to, sometimes on the way to work, stop and get a Starbucks, right? And then you're like, oh, looking at the credit card statement, like, oh, should I have gotten that? But it happens. It happens to all of us, whether it's a Starbucks or going out to dinner with friends or, buying something that you really want when you're at Target or, those type of things. So I love that you mentioned that because it definitely resonates with me. So yeah, we did do a Q&A on our Instagram. So our first question we got is, how can I save money when I don't know what I am spending?
I love this question as a place to start because awareness is everything when it comes to our finances. It's the foundation of everything else. We cannot feel control or relaxation around our finances if we don't know what's going on. So we always want to start with awareness of what we're spending and what we're earning before we even think about having to make changes. So I like to suggest that you start tracking your expenses for at least a week without any judgment. You don't necessarily need to change anything, just start tracking. If you use a credit card, it can be helpful to just go through your statements, but you also can just keep a note on your phone and just write it down every time that you spend something. So you can kind of keep track. All right, what was I spending and when was I spending and how much? This does not have to be complicated. We can use really simple things like a note on the phone. Will Rogers also has a budget sheet that you all can use as a reference. And if it feels overwhelming or you're not sure how to use it, the other thing that Will Rogers has is social workers on staff who are happy to go through it with you and support you in filling that out and tracking your expenses and figuring out, all right, how much can I comfortably spend in these areas of my life without feeling anxiety? So
Absolutely.
a really great resource that you guys have access to through Will Rogers. Our focus when we are learning how we spend, again, is not to necessarily have a perfect picture of like every day this is the X amount of dollars that this happens. We're looking for patterns. We're looking for, oh, on this month where there's like 3 birthdays, I always spend more money because I know that I want to go out for those birthdays. Or, hey, when I get sick, I end up ordering more DoorDash and I spend more money. Right? We're going to start to notice, oh, there's these patterns in my life, and that helps us to prepare. So, once we kind of get a sense of what we're spending, then we can start to be prepared for that and be ready for the patterns as they come. So I always know that when it comes to over the summer, um, I like to run my AC. I don't like to be hot. Well, my electricity bill is always higher in the summer. And one thing I've learned from tracking that is I know that every month before the summer starts, I set aside a little bit of money so that once the summer begins, I have a little pocket of money ready to go and I don't have to worry about the electricity bill.
I
And
love that idea.
it's game changing. And that means that maybe I spend a little less money in other areas throughout the year to accommodate that, but that is really meaningful for me. It helps me stay comfortable. I can have people over. And here in Southern California where we are, it gets really, really, really hot. So that feels important to me. But you've got to know what are you spending and just know your pattern. So we want to start by looking at that without any judgments. Not necessarily saying, oh my gosh, I'm so bad that I ran the AC. Say, okay, this is what helps me to have a comfortable life and this is where I'm gonna allot some of my finances.
Absolutely.
So,
Let's go to our second question that we got here. So, second question is, what is the easiest first step someone can take to start saving today?
so one way that I want you to think about saving is that you don't need to set aside large, massive amounts of money on all the time in order to have saving work for you. There's when your income is less, and again, I think all of us have stages of life where we have more money coming in, less money coming in. Your goal does not need to be to save $500 a month, $1,000 a month. If you are setting
Hmm.
aside $5 to $10 every week, if you're setting aside 5% of your paycheck, if you're setting aside small amounts and really leaving them there and not touching them unless it's an emergency, all of that adds up. So, one thing that you might do is you might do some automations. So, if you have a savings account, you often can set up an automatic transfer from your checking account into your savings account. And again, that can be $5. You just want to set yourself up with the expectation that this is something that you do. You transfer money over into a savings account, you don't even think about it. Um, you also might, as you're going into your budget, kind of align with this principle, which we call like pay yourself first, where we say, before I even allot all of my money that I can spend, I take what I'm supposed to be saving and I move it over and I pay myself first with that savings before I even start to think, all right, what can I spend? A lot of people do it the other way around. They say, oh, I want to spend,
Hmm.
and here's what's left over and I'll throw that in there. And if you're able to save anything, that's a wonderful win, but it can be helpful if you're trying to prioritize your savings to do it the other way around and say, I want to save X amount of dollars a week or X amount of dollars a month. And that means I transfer that over before I even start to think about what I'm going to be spending this month. I also want to encourage you to start with whatever amount is not going to cause stress for you. So if you are brand new to saving, if you've never really been good at saving, if it feels overwhelming, start with a small amount that doesn't feel overwhelming. Because what you will start to notice is that when the amount that's in your savings starts to go up over time, that feels really good. That is
Absolutely.
right? So you get to see that and you're like, oh my gosh, this feels good. And it makes it a little easier to keep going. But at the beginning, if you haven't had that experience, it can sometimes feel like, oh, I'm just setting aside this money and I'll never see it again. I never get to use it. What's the point of making money if I don't get to spend it? People can have that kind of a thought. And so it's very rewarding over time. So start with an amount that won't stress you out and then start noticing, hey, it feels really good to see, hey, I have $500 over there. Hey, if my tire blows, like it won't be a problem. I can just replace it. And that kind of ease is so valuable. It's worth more than the money sometimes.
Yeah, I fully agree, Summer. I have something similar. So I have a few savings, and one is a car fund. So I literally put $10 in there every paycheck, a very small amount. But when that over time adds up, so that's $20 a month over time. If I ran over a nail, if glass hits my, some or a rock hits my windshield, like those types of things that we can't predict that we're going to need to spend money for, when we have that little savings aside, a $500 check when we get after we fixed our tire, and all these things can look a lot smaller to us when we have a little bit of money saved than looking at that full hundred or $500 check and
Mhm.
being, oh gosh, like this is the bill from that. It does help, and I will say it has come in handy. So I always recommend, even if it's $10, it can be a dollar. It can be anything, and it will slowly add up, and you don't use it until you need it. So it comes in handy. So I love that idea.
Yeah, it can be small and it still comes in handy. And again,
Absolutely.
it feels good, you know?
It feels really good to even see that little money that you're not touching. You're like, well, that's there, just in case, but it's there just in case you do need it.
We can't predict like what emergencies are going to happen, but we can know
Absolutely.
things will happen eventually. Like we are going, like, that's just life, right?
Yep.
And feeling prepared is so helpful. Another thing I heard you name that I think is helpful when you're starting to save is separating out your money. So you heard us talk
Mm,
about savings account, transferring it over. If you don't even see it in your account when you look at your checking, it reduces the temptation to spend that money. Because sometimes we say, "Oh,
absolutely.
I got this amount, it means I can spend whatever's in my account.
Yeah.
It's to spend." And if that's how your brain works, let's work with that by just moving it over and not and being like, nope, this is not available. I don't get to touch this. It's
Yeah.
in place ready for when we need it later.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that one. Well, let's see what the third question we have here is. So, our third question is, how can people stay motivated to save when the progress feels slow?
So let's name that sometimes the progress feels slow because it is slow. If we're saving just a
Absolutely.
time, like it's not we're not going to rack up these huge numbers very quickly, and so I want you to set both short-term and long-term goals when you're saving. So that means that you might say, I would really love to have $50 in this by the end of the month, and that can feel really good. And then you're going to say, maybe by the end of the year, if you save $50 every month, at the end of the year you'll have $600, right? And that feels really good. So you can set the short-term goal and the long-term goal and track both of them. Another way that you can make your progress feel a little bit better, even when it's going slow, is to do some sort of visual tracking of this. So that might mean you have a chart on your fridge that you bubble in every time you save some money, that you can visually watch it. It might mean that you have, this is, I think, one of the reasons why things like piggy banks or jars where you put money into
Are
feels
great.
right because you get to see it happening over time. Um,
Hmm.
Maybe you have an app on your phone that helps track it and like makes it visual, but have a way that you can see it and like see the progress that you've made over time. That can be something that's really helpful.
Absolutely. I love that idea. Now, let's see what our fourth question we got in was. So what are some common myths about saving money that can stop people from even starting?
Um, so I have a
Go
few
for
here
it.
that I want to talk about. I really like this question. There's a few that I wanted to say. The first
Yeah.
myth is I need to have a lot of money to start saving money. And the reason this is a myth is kind of what we've been talking about. Any amount is an amount that you can start at. I find that saving is more about building the habit of setting aside a portion of your money than it is having a huge amount that you're drawing from all the time. So you can start with any amount of money to start saving, even as Emma's saying, like, I set aside, like 10, $20 a month, for
Yeah.
the and all of that really helps and makes a difference. So you don't need a large amount of money to start. The second one that I think a lot of people fall into is I'll start saving money when I start earning more money. But the
Mm,
truth is that a lot of times as you earn more money, we have this thing called lifestyle inflation. So as we earn more money, we say, okay, now I'm going to start now I'm going to get a gym membership. Oh, I'm going to get a nicer car. I've got this car payment. Oh, now I'm going to start getting the organic eggs, right? We start kind of slowly ramping up what we spend, which is totally normal and fine. But if we set the expectation of, oh, when I make more money, I'll just have more lying around to save, that can be actually less helpful than we think it's going to be. So, this is why we want to be intentional of building the habit of saving without worrying about a certain amount of money that we need to be making. A third myth about saving is that sometimes it can feel like I'm saving money, I'm depriving myself, right? If I'm saving money, I'm not going on this trip, I'm not going out to dinners, I'm not buying these shoes, I'm not getting the new car, and I'm depriving myself of something. And I really want to reframe that to say that saving enables you to have choices in the future. When you have savings, it gives you options later on. If there's an emergency, you already have to deal with that emergency. There's enough anxiety there. Finances does not have to be a part of that anxiety, right?
Absolutely.
A gift to your future self. Um, and then another myth is people can have this sense of like, I'm just bad with money. I'm just not good with money. And what I want to encourage you to know is that this is a learnable skill. Nobody is
Mhm.
knowing how to manage finances. Some people are lucky enough to be trained how to do this through their family, but not everybody gets that. So that is absolutely something you can learn. And again, the resources at Will Rogers are awesome because you have people who can walk you through some starting points for this if you feel overwhelmed by it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like that. So we have about 5 minutes left. So I did want to get to our last question. And I think this is also a really good one. I like that it's last. So why is it harmful to link your self-worth to your bank account? Which I think a lot of people, including myself,
A lot of people do.
does. Yeah.
Again, I want to normalize this. Like, we live in a world that directly correlates how much money you have to how valuable you are. You think about music videos, you
Mhm.
think about TV, you think about movies, you think about the celebrities that we look up to. Like, how much money you have is a huge part of that.
Hmm.
So you have to be intentional about challenging this for yourself. But I think it's worth it to take a critical eye when it comes to the link between self worth and the bank balance because your self worth it is most helpful when that is a stable thing, when it's not tied to your external circumstances. So if I know that I'm a valuable person, I'm a worthy person, I'm worthy of safety and stability and love and respect, regardless of my financial situation, that means that through the ups and downs of life, which are guaranteed, like there definitely are going to be ups and downs financially in all of our lives, I get to maintain a stable sense of myself through that. It also helps us, I think, when we respect ourselves through our financial ups and downs, to give that same respect to other people. It can improve our relationships. If we don't buy into the myth that the amount of money you have is how much respect that you deserve, that helps us to really connect with more people in our family and our friend group who might be, again, going through those ups and downs themselves. We also will notice that when we connect our self worth to our balance and our account, that can get us caught in those shame cycles where we're avoiding, right? If I don't even want to look
Absolutely.
right, then that actually is not helpful for us to get where we want to be with our financial wellness. So this is where I want to encourage you to find your self-worth in other places in your life, in the people who love you, and the way that you see yourself and how you take care of yourself, just outside of what's going on for you financially.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I wanted to add, because we did get a few questions about debt, student loans, whether it's different types of loans that people have had to pull out during COVID. We did get a few questions about that. So I guess in this same question, um, how is it harmful to you as an individual to kind of say like I'm in debt, so that means like I'm worthless because I'm in debt, which is a hard feeling that I hate that people feel.
And I think this is actually a really modern way of looking at debt, right? This is not
Hmm.
historically, like, we have not always thought of debt as this like shameful bad thing to have. It's
Yes.
part of the financial world. Also, most debt you were only allowed to hold for like 7 years before it had to be forgiven historically. So like the way we do debt now is totally different.
Yeah.
But I think one thing to do is just to remind yourself like it's okay for me to take on loans to give me opportunities to live the life I want to have. As therapists, a lot of us, including myself, have a lot of student loans. Like, that's what's required to go to graduate school and get the degree and the
Hmm.
we need to get to serve people well. And there's been times where I feel anxiety or stress about that, but coming back to reminding myself, this has opened the door for me to do something that matters to me. Um, these are supports that give me opportunities, right? And that means like I can
Absolutely.
do what I can do to help to pay them off, but having this number tied to myself has nothing to do with how good of a person I am.
Yeah.
be a little tricky because we do live in a world that kind of is sending this message that debt is terrible and get rid of it all and all that all the time. And I don't think that that's necessarily the most helpful way, especially if debt is the way to open doors to education for you, right? Like that's education is worthwhile, and it's worth spending money on, and it's worth taking out some debt for me, and probably for you too if you have it. So
Yeah,
coming back to
absolutely.
values and what matters, I think is helpful.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Right.
Well, yeah, we are in our last minute here, so we'll have Summer wrap up.
Awesome. I want to say thank you to everyone who followed along with our Instagram series throughout the last few months. I know it was really fun for me to talk about the link between our mental health, our emotional well being, and our financial life. Because again, a lot of times we keep these as like sort of separate categories and they're really so, so connected. If anyone who's watching this has any questions for either me or for Emma, our email addresses are up on the screen. You're welcome to reach out and ask questions for follow up about any of the information here. Thank you to Will Rogers for having me and for supporting us in doing this series. And I hope that this information is helpful to everybody watching.
Yes, thank you. And just also to mention, you can watch any of these minute reels on our YouTube, which is Will Rogers Motion Picture Pioneers Foundation. Our Instagram is WR Pioneers, where you can find a bunch of summer videos. We have done a few series with her, so she has some great, great content on both our Instagram and our YouTube. So thank you so much for everyone following along and doing this Q&A portion. I think it was kind of fun to add to get some real life questions in there. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.